Ladies and gentlemen, let me begin with a truth that changed my life. A truth passed down by one of the greatest personal development philosophers of our time, Jim Rohn. Work harder on yourself than you do on your job. If you work hard on your job, you still make a living. But if you work hard on yourself, you can make a fortune. Now let's break that down. Most people wake up every morning and go to work. They put in 8, 10, sometimes 12 hours a day. They show up, they push through, they do what's expected of them, and then they go home hoping for better pay, a promotion, or just the weekend. But let me ask you something. Are you working harder on your job or on yourself? See, your job will always give you a paycheck. That's survival. But working on yourself, that's growth. That's freedom. That's where you build the character, the mindset, the discipline, the skills that eventually make you invaluable. You don't get paid for the hour. You get paid for the value you bring to the hour. If you're earning minimum wage, that's not the fault of the hour. That's the value you've attached to it. You want to earn more? Become more. Jim Rohn said it best, success is not to be pursued, it is to be attracted by the person you become. So the question is not, how can I get a better job? The real question is, how can I become a better version of myself so I attract better opportunities, better relationships, and a better life? Start reading the books you've been putting off. Start waking up earlier to learn a new skill. Start investing in your mindset, your health, your attitude. Because everything you do to grow multiplies everything you touch. And here's the magic part. When you work on yourself, your job gets easier. You communicate better. You handle pressure with calm. You start to lead instead of follow. You solve problems rather than create them. And suddenly, you're not waiting to be promoted. You become the person who can't be ignored. Most people spend the majority of their lives preparing to earn a living, but very few prepare to build a life. As a physician, I've often observed how individuals chase stability in their careers, focused almost entirely on titles, salaries, and promotions, yet neglect the far more critical foundation of personal well-being, emotional resilience, and internal growth. Just as one cannot expect physical health from prescriptions alone without a balanced lifestyle, one cannot expect a fulfilling life simply by securing employment and performing well at a job. A job provides sustenance. Yes, a paycheck to cover expenses, food on the table, and perhaps a few comforts. But these things, while necessary, are not sufficient to experience meaning, fulfillment, or deep satisfaction. If we liken the human being to a complex organism, then the job is merely one external input, like food. You may eat every day, but if you're not mentally stimulated, emotionally regulated, and spiritually grounded, that nourishment fails to result in thriving. In clinical terms, it's like treating symptoms without addressing the underlying condition. A paycheck can keep the lights on, but it doesn't illuminate the soul. To truly thrive as a human being, one must build the inner world with at least the same diligence they apply to external performance. When we focus solely on our jobs, we become reactive. We respond to the demands of the market, of managers, of schedules and quotas. We function within systems, often losing our sense of individuality, creativity, and deeper purpose. But when we focus on ourselves, on becoming more disciplined, emotionally intelligent, wise, curious, and healthy, we shift from being reactive to proactive. We no longer wait for direction, we become the compass. That's the difference between a person who survives and a person who lives. I have seen high-achieving professionals with excellent CVs and impressive salaries sit across from me in my clinic, broken by stress, disconnected from their families, and unclear on who they really are. Their jobs gave them a living, but not a life. Conversely, I have seen individuals with moderate incomes who read voraciously, took care of their health, meditated daily, volunteered, and practiced gratitude. They radiated peace. They were not just living, they were alive. The truth is, your personal development, your mental and emotional conditioning directly influences your experience of everything else. When you become more patient, more self-aware, more humble, more articulate, more disciplined. The quality of your relationships changes. The way you approach problems changes. Even your job performance, ironically, improves because you become more valuable, not just in output but in presence. And this is what Jim Rohn so wisely meant. Work hard on your job and you'll earn a living. But when you work hard on yourself, you gain the capacity to build a life, a meaningful, resilient, and expansive life. To bring it back to medicine, think of it as treating the whole patient, not just the disease. You are not just an employee or a professional, you are a whole person, mind, body, and spirit. Don't let your job define your identity. Instead, let your internal growth define your experience, and allow that to enhance everything else you touch. In the end, the most tragic outcome is not failure at work, it's success in the workplace and bankruptcy in the soul. So while you do what you must to earn your living, never forget to make time, space, and effort for who you are becoming, because your job will change. The economy will shift, positions will open and close. But the person you become through consistent self-work will always carry value, no matter the title, no matter the role, no matter the paycheck. And that in the truest sense is how you build a life, not just a living. One of the most common misconceptions I encounter in both my medical practice and in broader discussions about career and personal growth is the belief that compensation is tied solely to time. Many individuals are conditioned to think in terms of hours. If I work 8 hours a day, I should be paid accordingly. While this may be true at the most basic transactional level, it doesn't reflect the deeper truth about human value and contribution. Time is equal for all, but value is not. And this distinction, though subtle, is critical. As a physician, I do not get compensated simply because I am present in the clinic. I am compensated based on the depth of my diagnostic skills, the clarity of my communication, the outcomes of my treatments, and the trust I build with patients. All of these elements are not produced in the hours I spend seeing patients. They are the result of years spent refining myself, countless hours spent studying, staying up to date with research, learning to listen more attentively, and cultivating empathy. This is where true value is born, not in the minutes we log, but in the capability and presence we bring to those minutes. Think of it this way. If two people are doing the same job, but one consistently offers better insight, solves problems faster, communicates with more clarity, and leaves colleagues and clients feeling more inspired or cared for, who is truly worth more to the organization or community? The answer is clear. And the difference between them is not time, it's value. I often liken this to a specialist in medicine. A general practitioner might spend 30 minutes with a patient, while a seasoned cardiologist could review a case for 10 minutes and provide a life-saving diagnosis. The cardiologist is not paid more because of the clock, they're paid more because of the depth of insight and rare value they bring in that short time. This level of performance is the result of working on themselves, developing unique expertise, sharpening observation, and cultivating judgment under pressure. In the same way, no matter what field you are in, education, business, trades, creative work, your earnings reflect not your schedule, but your significance. And significance is built through intentional self-development. This includes refining your emotional intelligence, improving your ability to solve problems, deepening your communication skills, expanding your creativity, and maintaining mental and physical stamina. These traits aren't taught in a job training manual. They are the results of daily, deliberate personal growth. What's important to understand is that value is internal before it becomes external. The results others see or benefit from come from an invisible reservoir of knowledge, perspective, and integrity that you build in solitude. You become more valuable when you read while others scroll, when you train your body and mind while others choose comfort, when you reflect on your behavior and seek to improve while others blame circumstances. As a doctor, I often treat individuals experiencing burnout, dissatisfaction, or stagnation in their careers. When we dig deeper, it becomes apparent they have stopped growing as individuals. They've become fixated on external outcomes, bonuses, titles, recognition, without realizing that those things are only byproducts of the value they bring. When your focus returns to becoming better rather than merely doing more, your career and income naturally begin to shift. So let me be clear. Time is a fixed resource. You cannot extend it, but value is elastic. You can expand it endlessly by investing in yourself. When you begin to treat yourself as your most important project, learning, improving, adapting, your time becomes exponentially more valuable. And in this world, where people are often paid by the hour, the ones who rise are not those who work more hours, but those who bring more to every hour. The paycheck follows the person, not the clock. So if you want more from your career, your life, or your future, don't just show up on time. Show up as someone worth following, worth rewarding, and worth remembering. That's how value is created. In the world of medicine, one of the most important lessons we learn early on is that outcomes are rarely the result of force. They're the result of preparation, consistency, and alignment with natural processes. For example, we don't heal the body by simply demanding it to recover faster. We support its systems, reduce the burden of illness, and create the conditions that allow healing to occur. Similarly, in the broader context of life and success, people often find themselves frustrated, chasing results, chasing recognition, chasing wealth, yet achieving little or burning out along the way. Jim Rohn captured the flaw in this approach perfectly when he said, "Success is not to be pursued, it is to be attracted by the person you become." As a physician, I've seen this principle reflected not just in physical health, but in mental, emotional, and even professional wellness. When a patient attempts to push through burnout, ignoring their deeper needs for rest, meaning, or self-care, they may gain short-term results, but often at the cost of long-term well-being. Similarly, when a person chases success by overworking, overreaching, or constantly comparing themselves to others, the outcome is rarely what they hoped. Success, much like health, is not something we chase down with brute force. It's something we cultivate by aligning ourselves with the right habits, mindset, and environment. Take, for instance, the way a tree grows. You don't pull on the branches to make it taller. You nourish the roots. You ensure it receives sunlight, water, and protection. The growth is a natural result. The same is true of personal success. When we invest in our mindset, build discipline, manage our emotions, and remain consistent with purposeful action, success begins to show up, sometimes quietly at first, and then unmistakably. What's fascinating is that when people begin to shift from chasing external outcomes to focusing on internal transformation, they often report that opportunities begin to appear more frequently, relationships improve, confidence strengthens, decision-making becomes clearer. It's not magic, it's momentum. The world responds to energy, clarity, and competence. When you become someone who is grounded, skilled, self-aware, and purposeful, success is drawn to you, much like iron to a magnet. I've observed that many of the most successful individuals, whether in business, healthcare, or leadership, rarely speak about chasing success. Instead, they talk about systems, habits, reflection, and service. They focus on refining their internal compass, and in doing so, they naturally gravitate toward opportunities that align with their values and abilities. Their success is not frantic, it's composed, strategic, and often deeply fulfilling. It's important to understand that this concept isn't passive. Attracting success is not about sitting idly and waiting for results. It's about engaging in intentional growth every single day. Reading, practicing, reflecting, learning from failure, taking care of your health, choosing who you associate with, saying no to distractions, saying yes to difficult things that build resilience. All of these choices shape the person you become, and the person you become shapes what you attract. In medicine, we talk often about the importance of building a strong immune system rather than just avoiding germs. Likewise, in life, we must focus on building a strong inner self rather than chasing outer rewards. When we do, we become resilient, adaptable, and capable of navigating even the most uncertain circumstances. Success is not something outside of you. It's the echo of who you are. It mirrors your beliefs, your effort, your preparation, and your growth. So instead of asking, how can I get more success? Ask instead, who must I become for success to find me? When that becomes your daily question, The answers will transform your habits, your thinking, and ultimately your life. Just as we treat the root cause in medicine rather than masking the symptom, so too must we treat the source of success ourselves. Become better. And you'll begin to notice that success no longer needs to be chased. It will know exactly where to find you. In clinical practice, one of the most illuminating aspects of patient care is how interconnected every system of the human body truly is. We cannot treat the lungs without considering the heart, nor can we address chronic fatigue without evaluating nutrition, mental health, and sleep. In the same way, when an individual begins to grow personally, developing their mindset, emotional intelligence, and habits, there is a cascading effect that improves all other areas of their life. This is the essence of what Jim Rohn meant when he said that personal development multiplies everything. It's not just self-help jargon. It's a phenomenon grounded in the same systems-based thinking we apply in medicine. Take, for instance, a person who commits to learning how to manage stress more effectively. Initially, this may seem like an isolated goal, perhaps even a luxury, but in reality, that one change often leads to better communication with colleagues and family, more rational decision-making, improved physical health, and even enhanced work performance. Stress, when unmanaged, affects blood pressure, immune function, digestion, and cognition. Manage it, and you don't just feel better, you perform better, think more clearly, and experience a greater sense of control. What began as personal development in one area quickly ripples outward. The same holds true for habits like reading, practicing discipline, or expanding one's communication skills. A person who begins to read consistently, whether on leadership, psychology, or even fiction, gradually broadens their worldview. They become more articulate, more empathetic, and more confident in conversations. In a medical setting, I often counsel patients who feel stuck in their relationships or careers. Rather than offering a quick fix, I encourage them to start small. 10 pages a day of meaningful reading or 10 minutes of journaling. What follows is often remarkable. They begin to communicate more effectively at home, advocate for themselves at work, and even approach setbacks with a renewed mindset. These are not isolated improvements. They are multiplications. From a neuroscientific perspective, personal growth literally reshapes the brain. Neural plasticity allows new pathways to be formed when we engage in learning, reflection, or habit building. The prefrontal cortex, our center for reasoning, planning, and social behavior, becomes more active and efficient as we train it through deliberate personal effort. This biological foundation explains why developing oneself does not just improve one's self-image, it elevates decision-making, emotional regulation, and creative problem-solving. I have seen individuals who, after working on their personal development, no longer find themselves triggered by small frustrations. They listen better. They pause before reacting. They seek to understand rather than to control. These are skills that improve marriages, business negotiations, parenting, and leadership, all without the individual necessarily seeking those outcomes directly. That is the multiplier effect at work. You build one part of yourself, and the dividends pay out across every domain of life. Even in physical health, personal growth plays a critical role. People who develop discipline and clarity through mindset training often become more consistent with exercise, nutrition, and sleep hygiene. And the reverse is true. Those who cultivate a healthy lifestyle often find that their mental state sharpens, their confidence grows, and their social relationships improve. This is the holistic truth that medicine and personal development both teach. Everything is connected. It's also important to realize that personal development doesn't demand perfection. It demands commitment. Like taking a low dose of a powerful medication every day, consistent personal growth may not show dramatic effects overnight, but over time the benefits compound, just as with preventive health strategies. A few pages a day, a few mindful conversations, a few tough decisions to delay gratification. These are not grand gestures, but they create grand outcomes. So when we talk about personal development, we are not discussing a luxury reserved for spare time or wealthy professionals. We are talking about the foundational work that allows every other effort, personal, professional, social, and emotional, to become more effective. Personal development multiplies everything because it enhances the core engine driving all of it. You. And when you change, everything you touch begins to change with you. One of the most common and dangerous mental traps I see, both in the clinic and in everyday life, is the wish for ease. Patients often say, "I just want things to go back to normal," or "I wish this problem would just disappear." And in the workplace or in relationships, people carry the same longing for fewer problems, fewer responsibilities, less conflict, less stress. While understandable, this mindset is fundamentally flawed. It's like hoping a disease will resolve on its own, without making any meaningful changes to one's behavior, lifestyle, or internal health. In medicine, we know that the solution is not to remove every external threat. It's to make the body strong enough to withstand them. The same principle applies to personal development. You shouldn't wish for life to get easier. You should focus on becoming someone who is strong enough, resilient enough, and wise enough to handle it. In clinical terms, this is the difference between symptomatic relief and true healing. Take chronic pain, for example. A patient may wish to never feel pain again, and understandably so. But the real goal isn't to eliminate pain entirely. It's to build strength, mobility, and understanding so that the person can function despite discomfort and ideally reduce the root causes over time. Similarly, life will always involve challenges, deadlines, failures, misunderstandings, rejections, losses. These are not anomalies. They are constants. Hoping they disappear is equivalent to hoping the heart won't have to beat as hard during exercise. But rather than eliminating the demand, we should strengthen the system. This is why the most effective therapy, whether psychological or physical, isn't centered on escape but on adaptation. People who build their mental and emotional muscles through personal development don't just survive hard times, they often transform because of them. And what's fascinating is that this transformation doesn't come from the crisis itself, it comes from the decision to engage with it differently. To ask, what can I learn from this, rather than why is this happening to me? That shift in question alone marks the difference between someone who breaks down and someone who breaks through. In my own field, I've seen patients emerge from serious illness with more discipline, deeper gratitude, and sharper purpose than they ever had before. Why? Because the challenge demanded it. The pain forced them to grow. But that growth was only possible because they chose to rise to the challenge, not retreat from it. They didn't pray for life to get easier. They decided to get better. The same can be applied to personal, professional, and spiritual growth. If you're constantly wishing for lighter burdens, you may miss the opportunity to build stronger shoulders. Every challenge you face is not just a threat, it's a teacher. Stress teaches you time management. Conflict teaches you communication. Failure teaches you strategy. Rejection teaches you resilience. These are not punishments. They are invitations to develop the internal traits that will serve you across every aspect of your life. And just like in medicine, the process is rarely comfortable. Growth involves discomfort by nature, just as building muscle requires tearing down fibers first. Yet it is in this discomfort where transformation takes place. When you train your mindset to expect challenge, not as an enemy but as a catalyst, you begin to shift from being reactive to being ready, and readiness is power. You don't need a lighter schedule, fewer problems, or a perfect environment to thrive. What you need is strength of character, clarity of purpose, and the discipline to keep moving forward, even when it's hard. And those are not gifts handed to you by life. They are earned, day by day, through personal development, reflection, and perseverance. So the next time you find yourself hoping for things to calm down, for life to finally go your way, pause. Instead of asking for ease, ask for wisdom. Instead of hoping for fewer challenges, ask to become the kind of person who grows stronger because of them. That mindset in and of itself is medicine, not the kind that merely soothes, but the kind that heals from the inside out. In my years of clinical practice, one of the most consistent observations I've made is that people will go to great lengths to ensure their possessions, homes, cars, electronics, but rarely think of themselves as the most important asset they own. They'll budget for repairs, maintenance, and upgrades for everything, except their own mind, body, and emotional resilience. This mindset, while common, is tragically short-sighted. If your body is your vessel, your mind your command center, and your spirit your source of meaning, then you are your most valuable resource, your best investment. No stock, no real estate, no external business opportunity can outperform the returns that come from consistently investing in yourself. We often use terms like self-care or personal growth as if they are optional luxuries. But from a medical perspective, I can tell you they are not. The absence of self-investment almost always presents itself eventually in the form of chronic stress, fatigue, mental fog, anxiety, poor immune function, or worse. It might look like burnout in a high performer or depression in someone who appears otherwise successful. And when we trace it back, it's rarely about the workload or life's demands alone. It's about a person who stopped growing, stopped reflecting, and stopped nurturing the very system that everything else in their life depends on themselves. When I counsel patients suffering from burnout or chronic overwhelm, I often ask them a question that catches them off guard. What have you done for your mind this week? Not their calendar, not their employer, not their family, their mind. Most shrug or go silent. And yet if your mind is tired, unfocused, or flooded with negativity, how can you expect anything else in your life to function smoothly? Just like in physiology, where one failing system can compromise the entire body, when you neglect personal development, every area, your relationships, career, decision-making, and health suffers. But there's another side to this. I've seen individuals in difficult life circumstances who begin the journey of internal investment, perhaps through therapy, reading, meditation, journaling, physical activity, or mentorship, and what follows is nothing short of transformation. Not because their external life changes overnight, but because they do. They speak with more clarity. They handle conflict with more calm. They wake up with more direction and energy. Why? Because they chose to become the type of person who could thrive, not just survive. In medicine, we speak often of prevention. It's more efficient to build health than to treat disease. Likewise, it is far more effective to develop strength of character and resilience before crisis hits. Personal development is your emotional and psychological immune system. You don't wait for life to collapse before you build it. You train daily the same way you would with your cardiovascular system or your muscles. And like all training, the effects are compounding. You don't need to transform overnight. Reading 10 pages a day, spending 15 minutes reflecting, choosing a nourishing meal, saying no to distractions. These are small investments, but they add up. And over time, they create a version of you that is better equipped, more centered, and less reactive. A person who doesn't just navigate life, but shapes it. No one can take away what you build within yourself. Titles can be stripped, markets can crash, jobs can be lost, but the person you become through disciplined self-investment is yours forever. That wisdom, that confidence, that clarity, it cannot be outsourced and it cannot be stolen. So the next time you're faced with the decision to spend time scrolling or reading, to react emotionally or respond thoughtfully, to rest or procrastinate, choose in favor of your future self, because you are your greatest project, your longest relationship, your most impactful influence. And when you understand that, you stop waiting for the world to invest in you and begin to invest in the one thing that determines the quality of everything else: yourself.